Everyone, thank you so much for joining the Cybersecurity Career Talks. Today, I have three experts who are and we are going to be focused on IT audit career track. These experts have joined me because they have one thing in common, and that is that they have worked on they have worked in different roles and have transitioned to an IT audit career. Priyanka, can you take the disclaimer?
Yes, right. So we are all here in a voluntary capacity to pay it forward in terms of the profession that we're in and the profession that we feel passionate about. So the views being expressed here is solely our own personal views and opinions. So, we are in no way representing the companies or the employers that we work for. And just reiterating, it's a volunteer-led effort to contribute to the profession. So again, these are our personal opinions.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. And I'll just introduce you. So the first person, we have Alyssa Worden on our call. And unfortunately, she's going to join us through audio because there's some technical difficulties. And Alyssa is had started off as a general accountant, and then she transitioned into public accounting for 2 years, and is now an IT audit analyst. She has a CPA. She's a licensed CPA as well as an MBA from Montclair State University. And the second expert on our call today is Neeta Altaramani, and she has a wealth of experience in information security and technology, and she is considered an expert in the IAM, which is Identity and Access Management, and RPA governance fields. She holds a lot of certifications. She's a lifelong learner and a lifelong giver of, so she freely gives, she writes a lot, and she is a very avid reader. She has over 8,000 books in her library. You'll just see that shortly. And I'm really honored to know her. Let's go. So the third speaker is Priyanka de Abreu, and she is a senior manager of technology audit at Verizon. She too has an MBA, and she has various certifications like CPA, CIA, CISA, and she's currently studying for the CISSP. And thank you everyone for joining. So today what we are going to do is we are focused on an IT audit career track. The experts with me today are going to provide a strategic roadmap, which is going to help you plan your career, so to say, or see what a career in IT audit would look like, in addition to providing you with actionable tips that you can use right away. And I'm Nilofer Tamboli, and I lead this effort. This is a volunteer-led effort for creating, providing a roadmap or actionable tips to people who are trying to transition into a cybersecurity career. In a cybersecurity career, we have like various roles and various paths that are considered cybersecurity, and this is an effort to provide more clarity. So the agenda for today is an audit overview, like what types of audits are there, what type of job requirements are there, and then an IT audit career path, what education is required, what experience is required, what do you need, like what are certain certifications which are nice to have, or do we really require something, what kind of training is needed, and then tips for newcomers to the field. So I will ask Priyanka and Alyssa to speak about this, what an IT audit is. And
sure, I can
Go ahead, Alyssa.
So the main difference between an internal and an external audit, from the internal audit side, we're part of the organization and we report to the audit committee and the board, and we help develop risk areas and test internally to make sure that they're functioning properly. Where on the external, you're independent of the organization and you're typically providing an opinion on their financial statements and their different systems and controls that they have in place. Now for the audit categories, there's financial, operation, and technical, which would be IT. On the finance side, you're checking to ensure that their financial statements are accurate and complete. Operations usually focuses on the effectiveness and efficiency of the operations, and then the IT side will get into more of the technical controls for their different IT and systems that are used. Priyanka, do you want to add anything?
Priyanka, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. So getting into the specifics of what is entailed in an IT audit. So think of IT auditing as an assessment of the systems and the information technology environment of an organization. And that could involve looking at security policies, policies around operations of technology within that organization, and also very importantly looking at how these how the technical controls around these systems support the business objectives of the organization. So no application or system can be considered a standalone. Or think of each system as supporting some business process or business cycle within an organization. So when you're trying to tie risk, you have to be able to tie a technology risk to an overall business risk or a risk of a company not achieving its goals because of that technology risk. Going back to the differentiation between external auditors and internal auditors. So an external auditor from a technology perspective might focus more on the systems that have a direct financial impact. So any system that perhaps flows into financial reporting or accounting or revenue recognition, for instance. So those systems would be most relevant from an external financial reporting standpoint. Whereas when you're looking at internal audit, we would perhaps focus on those systems as well, the ones that have an impact on financial reporting. But we would also consider operational impacts of system controls.
Wow.
So go ahead, Nilofer.
No, so are you going to talk about and what else do you have to add? Like, how do you become an IT auditor, or what does this IT audit job entail?
Sure. So we have a slide coming up on the career trajectory of an IT auditor. How do you get into this field? So I'll leave that piece for that slide. But in terms of what does the job entail? So think of it as I always tell folks who are coming in to the team that it's not, don't think of technology audit as rocket science. Yes, you need to have a certain acumen. You need to have some knowledge and education in the technology area, but it is a disciplined approach. And if you follow a disciplined approach, methodology, and process in terms of conducting audits, and you use your, the knowledge that you have, the experience that you've gathered, that's really the most important element to it. And also later on, we're going to be addressing the human element, so which is really like, how do you negotiate? How do you, how do you establish connections with the folks within the organization that you're dealing with? So as you're working with system owners in terms of conducting audits, what is, how do you put your best foot forward? So a lot of the aspects that go into an audit job or an IT audit job are aspects that would make you successful in a lot of different areas and fields, not just an audit.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to request Neeta to talk about and explain like about the security and compliance field in a nutshell, but more about like how all IT audit touches all these different areas of operation.
Thanks, Nilofer. I'll build on what Priyanka talked about in terms of, what is an IT audit and what that entails. And essentially, you're looking at systems, you're looking at controls within those systems that have been put in place to mitigate risk. And the IT audit basically encompasses the security space, the compliance space, and these are all things that anybody who is familiar with security and compliance probably knows and understands that security usually entails talking about confidentiality, integrity, availability, extend that to authentication and authorization. And then you have compliance with various industry regulations, policies, standards, frameworks. And then you have your what exactly do those things touch? And pretty much everything revolves around people, process, and technology. And then what are you trying to protect? And that's essentially your operations, your network, and your data. And an IT audit generally will touch on different aspects of any or all of these domains. And I think that's the important part to understand is when an IT audit is defined, and we're going to talk about, what exactly goes into an audit and what's the life cycle, etc. One of those things talks about the scope of an IT audit. So that will define which of these areas is touched in an IT audit. And oftentimes you will find that even when you have an audit which is not IT, it will touch on some aspects of IT because today IT has become pervasive as a way
Mhm.
of doing business. So it becomes very important to have that technical knowledge so that the audits are complete and we do not leave any gaps in the assessment. That essentially what audits are for. They help us understand where there are weaknesses or gaps or overlaps within the systems, within our processes, so that those can be addressed to make the security posture for the organization more strong, more secure.
Thank you
I
so
think that's in
much.
a nutshell what how IT audit kind of sits in the middle and can touch all these different areas.
Wow. So, okay, thank you so much. Thanks. This is really good because it seems like IT audit touches almost every aspect of your business and every like technology as well, right?
Yes, because today, I mean, it's very hard to envision people doing business without technology, right? The use of
Mhm.
technology has become so widespread that invariably, when you're doing any audit, you end up in a situation where you will touch technology, and then
Mhm.
information security risk translates into business risk because if you don't address that, it
Mhm.
inherently makes your business processes weaker. I think we'll
So
talk about
true.
that more when in our next slides talking about IT audit. What do you do actually? And I think that's the next slide coming up.
Okay, and I am going to ask Priyanka and Alyssa to
Sure.
take this and chime in about what a life of an IT auditor looks like. So, what do they do, and how is it conducted, etc. Because that provides the people who are on just now, our viewers, as well as people, somebody who's like trying to transition to understand what the work will look like. So, take it away, Priyanka. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can start off. So, connecting back to what Nilofer said, that technology touches every part of a business process, or every in terms of objectives and processes of an organization, and also tying back to what Nita said, that the differentiation between a financial and an IT auditor is sort of blurring a little bit because of that very factor that a lot of the processes are supported and driven by technology. Up until 30, 40 years ago, you might have been writing journal vouchers on a piece of paper with a pen, but just thinking of the financial reporting cycle and the accounting cycle, right? All of those things are handled in the system. All your journal entries are in the system, right? So just emphasizing the fact that even if you're a financial auditor, developing some acumen in the technology space is going to help you. So in fact, what you see on the screen is really audit life cycle that applies to, an operational auditor, IT auditor, and financial auditor. There are more, in terms of obtaining evidence, you'd perhaps want more system-oriented evidence or more technical configuration evidence and screenshots when you're an IT auditor. But for the most part, this slide does apply to all types of auditors. And Alyssa, can I turn it over to you to go over the details and some of the key facts on this slide?
Sure. So the audit life cycle really starts when you have, you develop your audit plan and how often you're going to be auditing a specific process or a system. And then when you get into the details, you define your scope, which is really, what you're focusing on in that particular audit and getting more down into the detail of the specifics. And then you begin your audit initiation, which involves getting the particular people who might be impacted by the audit involved, just to kind of keep them in line with here's where we're going with the audit and here's what the focus is going to be and here's who may be impacted by what we do or do not find. And then you move into the field work phase, which is where you're actually testing the controls and getting into the nitty gritty of, here's the process that's supposed to be in place, identifying if it's effective or if there's controls that are missing to mitigate risks, which you would move into your gap analysis, which is really looking at, this is what we identified as missing and how big is that impact going to be and what issues are going to arise if that isn't corrected. And you get the business involved and bring in the people who are going to be able to put a process in place to close that gap. When you've identified that and worked through it, you issue your report. The business will move into the mitigation phase where they're implementing those processes to get the corrective action to close that gap. And when everything is resolved, that would be, the audit close, wrap up, everything has been mitigated that you identified as a control gap.
Okay, thank you so much, Alyssa and Priyanka.
Yeah, so talking about, actually, can you just switch back to the previous slide real quick?
Sure.
So, the different roles within an audit organization or team. So what I found is that the roles vary greatly depending on the size of the organization and the size of the audit team. So in my career, I've been in an internal audit team of a total of 11 individuals. So way back when I made the transition from public accounting to internal audit, I joined a very small internal audit group. And so the director of audit was the chief audit executive, and other than that, it was a pretty flat organization. Whereas in a larger organization where you're talking about publicly traded, where the audit group is functionally reporting to the board and the audit committee. There you might have more layers and more formal roles and responsibilities. There'll be clear demarcations between an IT auditor and a financial auditor, for instance, and you'll have a more nested, more structured organizational layout.
Okay, thank you so much for adding that. And now I think I'm going to pull in Alyssa. And Alyssa, tell us how to become an IT auditor. I'm asking you and I'm putting you on a spot maybe because you have recently transitioned from a general accountant type of role to an financial and operational audit, and then from there to an IT auditor. And just like in addition to like what is mentioned on the slide, just like walk us through what it is and how somebody can successfully transition.
Sure. So I think having the educational background in IT or computer science would obviously be more helpful for a specific IT auditor because you get more of the terminology and the specifics and the technical part of it. But for me personally, I had a bachelor's degree in accounting. I did a minor in computer information systems. And then when I went to grad school, I found that I enjoyed information technology. So I focused on that a little bit more in grad school. So I think just having some education either in IT or computer science or the accounting side, so you can have the audit experience is beneficial. And then as for experience, personally, I had audit experience. I think audit across the board, whether it's financial, operational, or IT, the experience is beneficial to becoming an IT auditor because you have the general idea of how an audit runs from start to finish, and you can experience, identifying controls and risks and working on how to test those different areas. And as far as the certification, I have a CPA license, which again is helpful just for the audit factor to kind of learn the specifics of what's entailed in an audit, what the terminology is. The terminology will be standard across the audits for, the identifying controls and more technical terms like that. But I think a CISA would be beneficial for an IT auditor, something that I've considered myself looking to study because it does get more in depth into what is actually involved in an IT audit and more of the information system controls that you wouldn't necessarily see in either the CPA or the CIA exam.
And we have a whole slide dedicated to this later in this talk. But now my question to you is, why did you decide to transition into an IT audit role rather than, stay within like your area of comfort? Like what was that which said, oh, let me flex this muscle, let me get out and be more uncomfortable, but like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, definitely. So, I've studied accounting and that was always kind of where I saw my career going. But over time, I started losing interest in it more and seeing how much the IT world was really taking over everything. It's become such a relevant and important part of every process that we see in every industry that we see in every business process. IT is really what's driving a lot of these processes. So for me, it was more of an interest to see, what impact this has had on the world and the business. So I thought, I liked IT in school, and I figured, combine my audit and financial background with the new and coming, way of life of IT, and I combined those two passions, and it led me to find a job as an IT auditor.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, it is a difficult, did you find it difficult like to transition, or you put in the hard work to like do it? And what are the things, what advice would you give people who's somebody who is like in an operational audit role or maybe a PCI assessor or something to transition into an IT audit role?
I think it would be just ask a lot of questions, for people in the field to see if it's something that you would be interested in. I think having an interest in general in information technology, if you have a passion for it, you can learn it and you can find your way around. When you get in there, there's a lot of on-the-job training and using your colleagues as mentors when you get in. But I would say it's challenging if you don't know the language of information technology, but the skill set that you have on the operational side or the finance side, you can learn how to apply it in the new field of information technology once you learn the more specific terminology and kind of shifting your focus away from that financial or operational to focusing on the systems and the way the systems are impacting the process.
Sure. Thank you. So there are a lot of transferable skills between IT audit, between like your operational, financial, and IT audits, right?
I think, yeah, the basic, the audit skills and what you learn as an auditor can be transferred across the board. Just learning those more technical IT specific, computer, network, etc., dialogue and the terminology and how that all works is the more challenging piece. But I think, at the heart of it, the skills that you have as an operational or financial auditor can be transferred across.
Thank you so much. Now we come to the education and the experience and what is required. And Priyanka, can you walk us through this?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the education environment, educational requirement, right? And I'll give a perspective from, a hiring manager here. So, for a technical role such as this, one would want to see something on the resume that to indicate that you have been able to accomplish educationally. So, for instance, if you have a major in your undergrad in a technical field, it could be engineering, it could be MIS, or even a minor in computer science shows some level of success that you have pursued that formal education and you have achieved something with it, whether it be a major or minor. Nice to have is that's a tough one because I've seen folks with many different variations being successful at the roles. I've seen computer engineers being successful, and I've also seen folks who had an accounting degree and had some element of they pursued a CISA, for instance, right, to self-study, to learn. That also shows some level of motivation. In terms of somebody who might not have a formal information systems education, but just having a certification shows that you were working full time and you have the motivation to pursue and learn along with working. In terms of not having audit experience, I would say it depends, right? There are some, and this applies especially with larger organizations, so a larger audit team, where there could be pockets of specialization. So, for instance, I've seen this in the data analytics space a lot, is that for a data analytics auditor, it's perhaps, more importance is given to, if you're a data scientist and you're really good at what you do, and then the assumption being we'll bring you in and we'll help you develop your audit skills. And similarly in the IT space, right? So say we want somebody who specializes in network technology, like say, for example, in a telecom environment. So you could come in as an engineer who has experience in telecom. You might not have any finance or audit background, but again, the assumption is that your experience with the technical aspects kind of is more important to us than your lack of the audit experience, again, with the assumption that you would come in and you would develop your audit skills over time. And then the last question, what would stand out in a resume for an IT audit job? I don't want to sound cookie cutter because, we're all humans, we're all different from each other. The path to success can be many, right? Success criteria can be many, but I would say certifications definitely stand out. If you have a CISA or a CISSP, for instance, it shows that again, you have the motivation, you pursued it. It shows that you accomplished it. That means at least you studied for and have objectively passed an exam that tested your knowledge in that field, right? I think that's about it. Neela, was there anything else?
No, and one thing which is not over here is like what to never put on your resume. So, which would turn you off totally and you say, okay, I'm done with this. Because I know you get like probably like thousands of resume you've reviewed and you've like during your career. And so what is something which would definitely like has no place on the resume and should not be mentioned?
I would say, I think I'm in a lucky spot where, our recruiters screen a lot of the resumes for us, as hiring managers. So I do see like a much smaller subset of the total population of applicants, But I would say if I'm reading through a resume that looks like a lot of technical jargon has been thrown in there without appropriate context, and again, I'm not trying to say that I would necessarily reject the resume. What I'm saying is that it doesn't come across as genuine, because right? Because at the end of the day, yes, it's a given that you have some technical background, but you kind of have to put it in context of as to what you were trying to accomplish. What were you auditing? What business objective were you addressing through that IT audit, for instance, right? So I think some people, or some applicants, just my advice to you would be, um, balance out the technical terminology with, with language that explains, uh, your strength as an auditor, and how you understand the business as well.
Sure, thank you so much.
I'll
Because
I'll just chime in here, Nilofer, if you don't mind. When you ask the question of what you shouldn't put on your resume, I would definitely say the one big no-no is don't put something on your resume that you have not done, right? Just to make it a better fit or pass the ATS or to get your resume in front of the recruiter.
Mm.
Don't put stuff on there because you think, oh, if I don't have this, my resume is not going to pass, whatever the recruiter or the ATS or the algorithm. If you don't know something, it is okay. You don't have to have 100% fit for a particular job to in order to apply for it, and that's something which a lot of people don't realize. But if you put something on your resume, then the expectation is that it's like introducing
Mm.
evidence in a trial, right? If you talk about it, then you can be cross-examined on it. So don't
Right.
talk about things that you have not done. It is okay to say that, well, this I haven't done this, or I haven't worked with this particular product, or I don't have this experience, but I'm interested. I think one of the things that helps a resume stand out is showing that progression of learning, right? The fact that somebody is willing to put in the time and effort to learn, that they have been doing things which are uh, aimed towards helping that person go for the job that they are wanting, right? So let's say if your degree is not in computer science or information systems and you want to get into IT audit, you can show, you don't have to have a formal education in it, but you can show that you've been taking courses, right? Whether online or through, evening classes, weekend classes, whatever. But if you can show or demonstrate that, you have been including, or, you've been ramping up your educational, your technical education, that you're familiar with those concepts, that helps, right? That shows that there is a drive to learn. There is a willingness to put in the time and effort for what you're trying to achieve. And I think those things count for a lot. So in terms of, you may not have everything that the job entails, but if you can demonstrate that you're working towards it, that goes a long way in making that a candidate, an attractive candidate. Because, like Priyanka said, everything can be learned, right? And I would also say that there are things that people kind of self-edit out, saying that, oh, well, my mainframe experience from 20 years ago, nobody's going to be interested in that. You never know. There might be that, that particular organization still has a lot of mainframe systems out there, or that one AS400 system is still sitting out there, and they look for somebody, so that one thing that you might have actually might make you stand out. So you don't know. But that also doesn't mean that you fill your resume with everything. But if there are things that you have done, you may not think it's relevant, but it might be something that you should at least mention it somewhere, so that if somebody it catches somebody's eye, it can help. But please do not put things on your resume that you have not done or you can't speak to, because that's one of the biggest put off, right? Even if everything else is good, even if I like talking to you, if I find the things that are on your resume and you can't explain or can't talk to it, that becomes a red flag.
thank you, thank you. Because what I have seen recently is all these online services, and there are like a bunch of people who like create a resume for you, which will pass the ATS, etc. And they do what is like known in the marketing as like keyword stuffing, basically, to get as much as possible. And then one is like a universal thing, which is like never um, embellish your resume. And I have a question from Deepa Lakshmi, and she is asking, what is the growth in this field?
Huge. Huge. Like we said at the start, technology has become so widely used and pervasive in business that the need for auditors in general and IT auditors in particular is growing exponentially, right? I don't think we can keep up with the demand that's out there, and that's generally in the information security space. but I think also in the audit space, the need for auditors with a technical background or IT auditors is big. I believe there were like about 20% of the jobs were still going vacant, and it's only expected that industry is going to grow. So
Thank you. Thanks. And one thing I've noticed is that you could go to any like big company and they will most probably have like a role for an auditor, which they are hiring for.
yeah, and we can talk about that when we come to the career path slide in more
Sure, sure,
detail. But yeah,
sure. Okay, now we are going to talk about certifications, right? So all of us, except for I think Neeta, because Neeta is like a go-to person for the um, IAM space, the RPA governance space, and the the machine learning, etc. She has focused on that. So she has all three of us, Priyanka, Alyssa, and me. We have a CPA, and I just wanted to make sure that people know that a CPA is not required for an IT audit role. We got it because for different reasons, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that it's not like otherwise, because it puts off a lot of people who think that, oh, these people are there but they have a CPA and I don't have a CPA, etc. But what all of us over here have is lifelong learning experience. Like we take these examinations, but now coming back to what is required, right? So audit certifications like CISA is huge because it is a very widely expected and a requirement kind of thing for most IT audit roles. Then then this cybersecurity audit certificate program, which is created by. Are you talking about the SANS, or we are talking about like the
no,
CSX, which is
the cybersecurity audit program is from ISACA. It's an auxiliary to the CISA, and it focuses a lot on the emerging technologies and how to audit in that space. So it talks about mobile security, wireless, talks a little bit about cloud and AI/ML in that space. So it's an add-on or an adjunct. It's a relatively new program that they launched in 2019, and it's more of a, this would fall in the category of a nice to have. But if somebody is looking to transition into the IT audit space, I think the most critical certification they should opt for is the CISA. I think that's something that people look for in an IT auditor. Having any of the other information security or some of the technical security certifications can work in lieu of that, but the CISA kind of is a combination of having the audit background and the technical background. So in an IT auditor, that's probably the number one certification that I would target. And the good thing about the CISA is that you can actually pass the CISA exam. You need 5 years of experience, and you can use some waive some of that off in terms of combination of your education and experience, but not all of it. So you can actually pass your exam and then wait for get the appropriate experience and then get the certification. But as long as you pass the CISA exam and you can note that in your resume, and that helps the recruiter or the hiring manager know or understand that, like I said previously, that you are working towards, that you're committed to this career, and that you put in the time and effort, or you have that basic understanding of some of the terminology and some of the the life cycle and understanding of how the process works. So I think that's key. I do want to point out, I know that the CPA is not required for IT audit, but I would point out that if one is wanting to go higher up the chain in internal audit, especially once you get past the senior manager role, if you're trying to go for director, VP, SVP, head of internal audit, a CPA does help tremendously at that stage, because at those kind of positions, you are not looking at just IT audits, right? You're also encompassing financial and operational audits. So, from a long-term perspective, that's probably a good certification to hold, but obviously not required for somebody looking to transition into the IT audit space.
sure, sure, very valuable. One of the things that I found very useful was the certified internal auditor, the CIA, because that provided me with a very, very thorough background on what and why of the audit, why are we doing what we are doing, etc. So it was like a real like you can say like a class, as if like, you know, where if somebody is like really interested in this career, a CIA, I think, is really tells you like why we are doing what we are doing. And then the CISA is great for, like you said, for the IT audit role, because that goes deep into the systems audit. And thank you so much about like the CPA. I got that exact what you said. I got like that exact same um, advice, where somebody said, hey, yeah, you're great in this, but if you want to climb further, if you don't have a CISA, CPA, probably you're not going to, which is not true, right? Like, I mean, but that is a very sound advice. And it just tells people that, you know, if you really are interested in a career path and like into moving up, then that is something which is very required.
I think
Certif
that is also changing, right? Because a lot of the audit, what we know of and what we how we operate in the audit space, really comes from the financial industry, right? A lot of the audit functions, the life cycle, and the requirements, right? A lot of the regulations, etc., originate from the financial space. So that has been the traditional path. You're right. I mean, it's not an absolute requirement. Like, it's not that if you don't have a CPA, you cannot become head of internal audit, for example. But it's something that has traditionally been looked at, either that or in lieu of that, an MBA, some sort of an advanced degree becomes more important at the much higher levels, but not obviously necessary for once you're getting into, once you're transitioning into that field.
Sure,
Uh,
sure,
so,
sure. So um, again, this certified government auditing professional, the CGAP, is this, I think it is like the, by the IIA, right? Like it is for gas, like the generally accepted, the governmental auditing roles, right?
right. Yeah, this is more to comply with some of the federal government or the government regulations of around financial auditing. But it is something that becomes they look for, they feel more comfortable with somebody having that if you are digging around government records and government accounts,
Sure.
because they do have certain other requirements and certain other standards and regulations that you have to comply with, and how those audits are both conducted and how you respond to them.
Sure, sure. And what I see missing over here, and even if you are trying to uh, issue like a SOC report, or right, a sign off on any of that, trying to conduct like a SOC audit, which is your standards on compliance,
Right.
which is like an AICPA standard. And if you're trying to do that, the person who can only sign off has to be a CPA. So that adds value, right? If you have that, then it's going to add value to that organization that you join.
Yeah,
And
and that goes back to the different roles within an audit team, right? So an audit team is not comprised of just auditors, right? So you have IT auditors, you have the business domain specific auditors, you have data analysts, you have people who issue the reports, the people who are responsible for signing off on those reports, and those are usually, some of those roles of the people who can issue the report, the people who can sign off on those reports or attest to those. There are different levels within the hierarchy or the management of the organization, the audit organization, and there are different roles within the audit team. So an audit team doesn't just comprise of just auditors, right? So there are auditors, there are data analysts, there are reporters, there are scribes, there are many different roles within that. So yeah, I mean, somebody who needs to sign off on, especially some of the big accounting firms that deal with things like issuing the SOC 2 reports, or the SOX, the reports, that the 10K report that goes for the SEC filing, for example. There's a certain requirement of who can do that, at what level must you be, because it comes with certain ramifications and some accountability and responsibility. So just no, it can't be just anybody signing off on those reports, right? So there are certain protocols in place as to who and how that can be done.
sure, thank you. One certification which is not very, um, I mean, very common is the ISO 27000, the ISMS 27001 lead auditor certificate, which is more because it's like an ISO standard, and it is more, maybe it's more common I've seen outside of the US, or can you speak a little bit to that, Neeta, if you can?
Yes, I mean, if you notice that at the bottom, you'll see that for an IT auditor, and I think other auditors as well, not just IT audit, but IT auditors as well, knowledge and understanding of some of the regulations and standards that come into play, depending on the nature of the business, the scale of the business, the size of the business, the industry that they are in. Certain regulations and standards become important, and they have to know and be aware of those things, certain frameworks, because a lot of the internal compliances, or sometimes when you are doing supply chain risk assessments, or you have to respond to audits where your customer wants to perform an audit to ensure that your security posture is correct, because those also happen. You are then expected to comply with some of the cybersecurity frameworks, and that's where things like NIST and ISO 27001, those kind of things become important. And yes, there are specific certifications that you can get, which are a little more niche, in the sense that you can always specialize in that. I'm ISO 27001 certified auditor, which means I know that particular framework well enough that I can say if your systems are compliant or not compliant with that particular framework. Right? There are people who are specialized in things like being a SOX auditor or being a PCI DSS auditor, right? So,
Sure.
and now, of course, we also have data privacy being such a big issue. It's becoming a bigger and bigger deal, with more countries and more states in the U.S. coming out with their own data privacy standards and regulations. So the information privacy professional certification is becoming more important, because you have to understand, and part of that is also where you understand that and come up with how are you compliant or not. So you have to obviously understand those standards to be able to understand where there might be potential gaps, or where the controls are not sufficient.
Wow, thank you so much. Priyanka and Alyssa, you guys want to add anything to this?
No, I think that was a comprehensive coverage of all certifications. I personally learned a lot in the last 5 minutes.
Thank
I
you so much.
agree.
And there is a question before we get into this. Um, so Deepa is again asking that are there any programmers moving into as IT auditors? So what her question is for all the people who are in IT, who are in developing, right? Has anybody transitioned? And I can personally say yes, there are a lot of people who've transitioned into IT audit, but I would like the three of you to chime in.
I'll
Sure. So,
jump in if you don't mind, Priyanka, and then I'll hand it over to
yeah,
you.
go ahead, Neeta. Go
Since
ahead.
my career track has been from IT into information security, and more specifically, risk and governance and audit, yes, the answer is absolutely yes. It happens all the time, and typically, what happens is that if you're a developer, DBA, you are a wholly software engineering, computer science major working in programming. Um, you will come across audit where you are asked to demonstrate compliance, right? Or you're asked for evidence. And that will probably be the first time where you get an interaction with an audit or with an auditor. And usually you will, if you are lucky or not lucky in some cases, depending on how you look at it, you usually get tagged to be the liaison with the internal audit or with information security, to work on audits on an ongoing basis. And they're usually in an organization, they are, depending again on the size and the scale and the industry, there are often multiple audits that are going on at the same time. So you will find that you're often responding to audits, responding to requests for information or for data, etc. And it's an opportunity for, if this is something you're interested in, it's an opportunity for you to get to know more about, what exactly, how is an audit done, what exactly does that entail. And it's actually a great opportunity to say, hey, to volunteer, because believe me, in most cases, nobody wants to get into audit, right? Especially if you're not the auditor, right? If you're the auditee, people tend to run away. But it's an excellent opportunity for you to actually step in and understand, what is being asked for, what are they trying to do, understand and learn how, what audit is going on, try to understand a little bit more about that. And that's usually the part that I have seen, is that people kind of get pulled into an audit, they become responsible for it, and then they kind of develop this relationship with the auditor. They gain a better understanding of what the audit is, what is required, and from there, it's something that piques their interest. They want to learn more, and then they start kind of moving towards, they become the point of contact, then they become responsible for certain parts of the audit. And it's usually a migration that way. And in many cases, like Priyanka mentioned earlier, that sometimes the audit department is looking for particular skill sets because there are areas that they are trying to expand or enhance. So, for example, we want to make sure that we have the necessary skill sets to do network audits, right? Or we are looking for somebody who can help bolster, cloud audits, right? Or audits related to migration to the cloud or adoption of cloud technology or RPA. And in those cases, you look for somebody who has that technical background. And then, you can always come in, and if you have the mindset or if you are interested, the other things can always be learned, right? So it's not like, these are all learned skills. These are not things that, you inherently know. It's not an inherent attribute. These are all things that you can learn. So that also happens. So if you're interested and you are in IT and you're doing a software development job, look for or talk to your internal audit department to say, uh, what areas are you looking for, and does the skill sets that I have, is that something that can help, and what else do I need to do? So yeah, I mean, that's a long way to say that yes, absolutely happens. And I think Priyanka, you can probably answer this better, because I know for sure in Verizon there have been several cases of people who have
Yeah.
migrated over from IT to internal audit.
Yeah, definitely. I think from an internal standpoint, there are definitely more paths internally. Like, if you're moving from one department to another within an organization,
Right.
because there is the context of your accomplishments within that company, right? So so say you have mentors within that company, or your direct supervisor or director, they are willing to stand behind you in terms of recommending you. That switch becomes easier because, think about it, right? If as a hiring manager, if an applicant comes to you recommended very strongly by their leaders, you place a lot more emphasis on that, on that person's candidacy over another who doesn't come recommended. So that becomes important.
Yeah, I mean, you're a known quantity, right? So that makes it
Mm.
a huge thing, because anytime you are hiring somebody from outside, that there is always a risk associated with,
Mm-hmm.
is this person going to be a good fit? So I mean, you try to kind of take all of that into consideration, and vet all of that in the interviewing process. But nobody's perfect, so there's always that risk, versus with somebody who's already within the organization. And a huge plus to that is that person who's within the organization, an internal candidate, already knows the culture, already knows a lot of the processes, so the ramp up time is
Mm-hmm.
that much smaller, right? So there are many things which make that very attractive.
Uh, Continuing, do you want me to like pop another question, or do you want to?
Now, if you have questions, let's do it.
Okay. So now the question is that what is the difference in pay scale range from somebody who's fresh coming into this, or from somebody who is like an IT development and then trying to transition into an IT audit role? And I know the answer is it depends, but still, if you can.
So, if you don't mind, I'll jump in, and then Alison and Priyanka, please feel free to chime in. But the pay scale from an entry level position to the head of audit, if you want, or senior position, there's quite a large variance in that. In terms of entry level, it can be anywhere, and and it really depends on location, because places like New York and San Francisco, your salaries can be almost 30-40% higher than other places, right? So that's a pretty significant variance. But entry level IT auditors, or auditors, it, at least from what I've seen, it varies. I've seen that it varies between about 50, 55 to about 75, 80 would be for an entry level, depending on which company you're going to, which company you are in, where the job is, and then the location, et cetera, et cetera. And also what your qualifications are. Are you coming in as a fresh from college with no experience, or you have some experience that can transfer in? Do you have some transferable skills? So a lot of that things goes into what your initial salary would be. And then it can go all the way up to, I mean, if you have a few years of experience, it varies between 100K to about roughly about 200K. So it's quite a wide spread. So I know it probably doesn't help too much, but I think with a few years of experience, with the proper certifications and experience, 100K salary is not out of the bounds. Alyssa and Priyanka, if you want to chime in.
Okay, I think the question is that the range from somebody who's like fresh moving in to an IT development person moving in, is that like a difference in that range? I think that is what the question is.
Yes, there's bound to be. Sorry, Priyanka, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm again, I just want to put the disclaimer. I'm not talking with respect to Verizon specifically, but what I've seen across the board, right, is that there are certain computations that are taken, certain inputs that are taken into the computation of an offer, right? So your total years of experience, your years of experience directly related to the position that that you're getting an offer for. What your education is. So, do you have an advanced degree in your field? What certifications do you have? And irrespective of, you might not have an IT audit specific certification, but something that is even slightly relevant to the profession does go into that computation. So there's a lot of factors, so definitely, like, overall years of experience does figure in that analysis.
Okay, and take it away from here, Anita.
Okay. Well, I'll just quickly talk about this, but then I think I would like Alyssa and Priyanka to talk about this. But generally, there are two career paths that we see for people who want to get into the audit space / IT audit space, and they generally run in parallel. And you can see that it's either you have an in-house internal audit team or organization that you can join and be part of, or you can look for a big four accounting firm that you want to join and gain that experience. And they both offer a very similar career trajectory. As you can see, the levels and the hierarchies are pretty similar. The difference, primary difference, is that in the big four accounting firms, you are more likely to get exposed to a wider variety of industry and setups and technologies than you would in-house, because in-house, it is whatever your organization is using or whatever it has in place and the processes. On the flip side, though, it is much easier, relatively speaking, it's much easier to actually get or try to get into an in-house internal, audit job, as opposed to trying to get a job in the big four. Because obviously, as you can understand, there's a lot more, people applying for those kind of jobs. And here, being in-house, you tend to have a little bit of an advantage, right? Because you're already there at the company. At least that's my high-level take on it. Alyssa, Priyanka, if you want to talk about a little bit more on this.
Alyssa, why don't I ask you, because you've seen it on both ends more recently than me, right? Public accounting and internal audit. Why don't you give us your take?
Sure. So I think when you're in the more public accounting, you're working on different clients. So every week might be a different, you might be going to different clients on a weekly basis, some of them that are longer. So you have exposure to a wide variety of different industries because, you know, you're going to your clients. So it's not like your own business, where in-house you're kind of, you have to learn, you know, the process, the different business groups that are within your own organization, but you're, for the most part, you know, you're working from your own office. You don't have to travel to your different clients, and you're more focused on the different like processes and systems that your company is using, versus in public accounting, it's exposure to whatever your client is using, their processes. So you can go from a manufacturing client to a real estate client, to a non-for-profit organization. So your area of expertise would be a lot more difficult to obtain in that sense, because you're seeing different clients and different industries, where in-house, I think it's a little bit more direct, where, you know what your business does. It's getting into the nitty-gritty of the different processes, the different business groups, the different organizations within your own overall company.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to bring up a point, which is like the human element, what it is like. Um, I mean, I want everybody to chime in, and as we talk about like what does success look like, right? And what are the attributes of a successful IT auditor? Um, so, Neeta, if you can start.
Sure. So this is basically I tried to put together with with everyone else when I'm looking to hire an auditor, and more specifically an IT auditor, because that's what I was focused on. What are some of the things that I look for, and then do they demonstrate these attributes or these behaviors or characteristics either through in their interviews or through their resume? These are some of the things that I look for, and I think these kind of are attributes that pretty much apply to any auditor. I would say, again, it's not specific to an IT auditor, probably with the exception of the technology aspect of it. But I think even other auditors are now having to at least become conversant with technology at a concept level or fundamentals level. So these are some of the things that I would say that we would look for in an auditor. And the way this is arranged, it's more of, as you go down the list, these are some of the things that are required as you go up the management hierarchy from an auditor space. So for example, as an entry level auditor, an associate, or an IT auditor at the junior level, you don't necessarily need to understand the legal ramifications, for example, right? Or have as much of a need for business acumen or emotional intelligence. Those are always good things to have at any level, but those are more things which become more important or more relevant at a more senior position within the audit space. The one thing I will, and I cannot, stress this strongly enough, is you need to understand, if you are looking to get into this job, you need to understand that auditing requires a very different mindset, right? It is not a job that is for everyone, and you have to know and understand what the job entails, what is required, how you would work, and be very sure that it is something that you want to get into, right? Because the last thing you want to do is get what you want and then find out that you're either not good at it because some of the attributes required are not your strong points, or while you might be able to do it, it's not something you enjoy doing, because both of those things do not end up with very good results. The outcomes are not nice. So know yourself, be honest with yourself about what you like and don't like, and be very sure that you understand, speak to people, understand what is required from the job, and is that something that you want to do, are good at it, and are you willing to put in the hours and the effort and the time to do it. And that's the one thing that I would say, that it becomes very, very important, that if you're not interested in learning lifelong, audit is not for you, right? Because especially in an IT audit role, technology is changing so rapidly. You have to constantly be on your toes and you have to learn, right? if you don't like learning, if you don't envision a life where you are constantly having to keep up with what's new, what's coming, how does it affect the industry, uh, then probably this is going to be a tough field for you to be in. And you should probably kind of evaluate if this is really where you want to be, and maybe there's something else. Maybe there are other places in information security that might be more relevant. But but this is something that I can't stress strongly enough. Alyssa, Priyanka, and Nilofer, your take on that.
I'll chime in by saying this, right? I'm actually going to go into the emotional intelligence piece of it. So, being empathetic, in a 360-degree capacity is very important because, whether it be to the folks who report to you, your clients, your colleagues, and by clients, I mean is the stakeholder, the folks that you're auditing, your directors, your leaders, right? There are some very objective criteria, like, you have to be super organized, the whole idea of attention to detail, focus, being organized, deadline driven, timeline driven. However, like making sure that you're also empathetic to the circumstances that you're dealing with. Like I'll give a very practical example, right? COVID-19. So a lot of parts of the business are impacted significantly by COVID-19. So, what does that mean? Like, if you have a deadline for your audit, but the business is rapidly trying to make a change to adjust in the COVID-19 environment, if you're being a stickler to your deadline, you got to be cognizant of what you come across as, to your stakeholders. And also, it's important that, once you've done, you've completed an audit, you've never really moved on. So just keep that in mind, because there could be issues that have to be addressed by the stakeholders, by the clients. They might have to do some remediation work. So, you want to make sure you're available to answer questions, So say, for example, you issue an audit report, end of March, and there are some issues that have to be remediated by end of August, right? Don't think of it as you're throwing it over the wall and then you're walking away. It's very important that you check in like before the month of August to see how remediation efforts are going. You come across as somebody who can be approached to answer questions. So yeah, that's I just thought that the emotional intelligence thing is really important for this position.
I'll touch briefly on, and Alyssa, if you can speak also to the legal ramifications, because I think a lot of people don't realize that when you go into audit, especially in the financial space, right? Oftentimes, and depending on if things can go horribly wrong for an organization, sometimes auditors and the results of audits and the audit reports can become you know evidence in litigation, for example, right? And having an understanding of when you put something out in a document, that it's not just it's not something where you can just say, well, I thought X, and I thought it wouldn't harm to put Y in there as well. So if you can talk about some of that stuff, I think that would be helpful for people to understand.
Sure. So at the end of the day, when you're, issuing the audit report, your name is going to be attached to that, and you're really saying, yes, we did our due diligence. We tested everything that we could. We've identified the issues here, and you're attesting to that information in a sense of, I did my part. I've checked to make sure all the boxes are clear. They have the proper controls in place. From the legal standpoint, especially, on a financial situation where, even from an IT side with the systems that are involved in the process, say we're overcharging someone or undercharging someone, or we're not paying the proper tax on something, all of those things have legal ramifications because we have to abide by the laws and regulations that are set forth by the state, the county, et cetera, whatever the jurisdiction is. So when we're saying, yes, we've checked everything and everything is good, here's what we have as the issues that need to be remediated, we're really saying that, yes, everything is in place in the proper way. So when your name is attached to that at the end of the day, it could fall back on you. And I've seen situations where things like this have happened, and, partners in accounting firms have to go to court and, attest that, yes, we checked this. And at the time that we checked it, it was, everything was functioning properly, with the exception of XYZ that we had them, had put forth a plan to remediate. So it really does come back on, making sure that you're doing your due diligence from the audit standpoint, because your name is going to be attached to whatever report you're issuing. So you want to make sure that you have all your bases covered, understand the laws and regulations that are in place for the jurisdiction that you're working with or working on.
Thanks, Alyssa. And I think I'll add to that the ability to grasp the big picture, understanding, how audits can affect the business directly, right? So I'll take the example of the two big ones that most publicly traded companies have, which is the PCI and the Sarbanes-Oxley, or the SOX audit as it's called. And a lot of people, even within the company, who are engaged in, the day-to-day, the nitty-gritties or the tactical aspects of responding to those audits, a lot of people don't understand the ramifications that if the company that's doing that audit, the external auditors, are not able to provide the reports in a timely manner, that there are ramifications to the business. That if you are not compliant with PCI, you run the risk of not being able to accept payments, right, which has a direct impact to your bottom line. If you are a publicly traded company, and the firm that's doing your Sarbanes-Oxley audit is not able to issue the 10K filing, then you're not able to do your SEC filing. Your company, your CEO and CFO sign off based on those reports. They're not going to be able to sign off, or if they do, they cannot. But they run the risk of not being able to file taxes for your organization. So there are ramifications to the business, depending on how audits are conducted, and the timeliness of the audit, and the findings in those audits. So all of these things, it's important to understand how audit fits into the overall picture of the audit, and of the organization and the business, and how it can affect the business. And that becomes an important discussion or point of making sure that people understand the gravity of what it entails, and understand the seriousness of, if and when there are any issues or gaps identified, that they remediate those, and why it's important to do that. And that communication becomes important, because you will often find yourself, having potentially awkward conversations, or dealing with people who become very defensive, because you're essentially telling them that you found something wrong with what they're doing or how they're doing it. And it takes a lot of emotional intelligence and empathy, which what Priyanka talked about, is to make them understand that if whatever you are doing is helping them make things better for themselves and for the organization. So those are some of the key things that other than the actual doing the audit part, these are some of the things that an auditor has to deal with and has to know and understand, and that becomes very important.
Thanks. And one of the things that I would tell anybody who's trying to transition or into an IT audit career, or trying to become an IT auditor, is that if you like to be popular, and if you like to be liked by others and stuff, then this is probably not the path you should go down, because it's not going to happen. But at the same time, you have to have good people skills. And when you say something, it's how you say it that is important, because you need to be able to have that kind of uh, collaboration, like, and I mean, you can, like, while being honest, you have to reduce the um, reduce, like, means, because we are all humans, right? So I mean, yeah, I can say something in a very, very sharp and a pointed way, but it should not come as, you're trying to be like brash and this thing. So be careful, because whoever you are delivering your message to has been also, like, working and is putting in a good effort, but at the same time, explain to them in a way that doesn't cause like more problems for everybody else on the team when you say something. So, and before we go to the tips that all of us have for somebody who is trying to join this career, IT audit career, or um, there is a question which says, so what does, like, do we have to be like behind a desk all the time, or do you got to meet people? And so if you can like just explain that a little bit. Um,
I can take that one. I would say definitely not behind the desk, you know. Uh, the more interactive you are, you know, through meetings, through even in-person meetings. So again, depends on where your stakeholder is and whether you have the capacity to meet them face to face. I highly encourage my team to go, book a conference room, meet these people in person. If they are remote with respect to you, if they're located in a different office location, depending on the proximity, you know, if it's in the same state, take the effort out to drive down to the other office. If it's not feasible to travel, if it's out of state, set up like, meetings, encourage video calls. It's important to get email communication out to make it objective. You know, especially in the initial phases of an audit when you have requests, it's very, very important to get it in writing and make it very clear. But along with that, have another method of communication. You know, set up a meeting after you send out the request list. Set up a meeting with your client to kind of discuss each item and ask them if they need any clarification, whether they have any questions. So, this job does require a lot of energy in terms of, the different methods of communication. You got to be very clear, but you got to also be very empathetic. So, I would say the people skill aspect does come into play very, very strongly in an audit role.
Okay, thank you so much. And now we'll move on to the tips for newcomers or people who are trying to transition. And I will start with Alyssa. So Alyssa, what do you have?
Sure. So I think the first part that here we have touched on is learn about audit. Would be very beneficial just to understand kind of where you're, what you're going to get yourself into if you're looking to make the transition. Learn about the different phases of an audit or how the process actually works, whether that be IT specific or just overall audit. Some people are sitting on the other side of audit usually, just, getting requests, not really understanding the full process and the big picture of what an audit actually looks like. So I think that's something that before you even consider, applying for a job is just learn what it actually is to be doing an audit, because maybe you don't know what it actually means, and what you think it is not how it actually is in practice. So just becoming familiar with that process overall, I think would be a good start for someone. Before even, and then, if you do find that audit would be something beneficial that you would enjoy, then, if you want to focus on the IT part, get more familiar with the concepts and the technology trends and what the difference is between a financial operational audit versus an IT audit, just to see, if that's where you would want to take your career and the way you want to move your career forward.
Sure, thank you. Priyanka?
So, if newcomers, especially be a sponge, come in there with the idea that you're going to learn. You're going to learn about the organization. You're going to learn about the audit profession, right? And you're also going to learn about the technology. So it's like a triple whammy. Think of it that way, right? You've got to be invested in different aspects of it. The company that you're auditing, the processes, the systems, and as well as looking at the audit methodology to that's applicable in that situation. So yeah.
Sure, thank you. And Nita, if you can.
Sure, I would say, getting certified is very beneficial, especially if you're trying to break into the field. You may not have the experience, but at least studying for the exams, the course itself kind of helps you understand and learn about the audit space, about the terminology, the common, it kind of gives you a common base to have a conversation about it. um, Definitely would look at joining some of the relevant organizations, because they have many events that you can participate in to learn more, to network with people, network over LinkedIn, reach out to people who have the jobs that you want, right? And I have found that in, I would say, 99% of the cases, or even more, people are very helpful. People are willing to take time to help you. They will, guide you. They may not be able to become your mentor or sponsor, so to speak, but if you're looking for help or guidance, I have never had anybody turn me down, whether within the organization that I work in or over LinkedIn. I've always found people to be very helpful. So I would definitely say, obviously be respectful of their time, and but be prepared in, making sure that you know what questions to ask. But definitely network, join the organizations. There are industry events. You don't have to travel almost any big city. Most locations have local events that are relevant to, governance, compliance, audit. Join those events, attend those events. They're usually a day or so, so you don't have to go to like the big conferences, which are also very costly. But there are a lot of local events that you can go and learn about the industry, learn about what's happening. Start getting to learn about what's happening, in the news, right? What's happening in the audit space, because that's again something that, when we interview people, we tend to understand, like, is this person truly interested in this space and this job? And one of the ways to do it is to understand, are you keeping up with what is happening, right? Because if somebody doesn't have any interest in that, that usually tells us that, maybe they haven't truly considered if this is something that they want to be in. So also, you don't all, it's the big four are the big four, right? But it's not like there aren't low audit jobs outside of those big four. Almost any major city has local audit firms, and they do a lot of work, right? In fact, the bulk of the work is actually done by them locally, especially for the small and medium businesses that still have to comply with the same regulations. So be open to where and what you're looking for in terms of a job. And you also have to be realistic. And I think this is, again, another point that I would really stress on is, if you are looking to do a career transition, if you're trying to move from one career to another career, it's not always going to be a step up, right? In many cases, it may not even be a lateral move, because you have to understand that, if you have no experience, you kind of have to take your mindset and understand that you might be starting at the bottom of the rung on that particular area. So you might have 10 years of experience in some field, but if you've never had any experience in either technology or an audit, and you want to get into that field, you might have to set your sights a little lower as to the kind of jobs that you're applying for. And it's a matter of getting your foot in the door, and once you have the job, you can demonstrate, through your how you can transfer your skills or experience into that, and then move up. But if you're thinking that, because I am I have 10 years of experience, so I should move into a job which is equivalent to a 10 years experience in the audit space, that's not going to happen, right? So you have to be realistic about when your job hunt, and don't go by titles. That's something else I want to make sure people understand. Sorry, understand is that people sometimes put too much stress on, this is the title of the job that I want, right? Instead, look for what in the job description, what the job actually entails. And in the interviews, when you are asked, do you have any questions? Ask questions which help you understand what the scope, what the role and the responsibilities are, so that you can understand if that's a good fit for you, or if that's something you want to do, right? Also, make sure you understand which industry are there particular industries you want to target. Like, for example, you want an audit job in banks or financial services sector. You want an audit job in healthcare. Then those might be, you also have to then understand and keep up with industry news, right? If you want to get into audit and healthcare, knowing HIPAA would probably be a good idea, or being more familiar with HIPAA would probably be a good idea, right? And knowing what's happening in that industry. So um, on the flip side, don't look for an absolute fit, right? That if I don't check off every single requirement that's in the job description, that I'm not going to apply for it. Very rarely does it happen, and I think we can all attest to it, even with our years of experience and our certifications, that if we ever look at a job, it's very rarely that we find that we tick all the boxes on every single job that's out there if you're interested in one. So keep that in mind, and focus on what are your strengths, what is it that you want to do, and does the job align with where you want to go and what you want to do, and get there.
Thank you so much. Um, and with this, we are going to, I'll check if there is any other questions coming up or not, otherwise. Okay, so Anshu Tomar is saying that I don't hold any tech background. How should I start? And that she is having some life science degree and GXP auditing experience. So this is very specific to her, but could be like relevant to anybody else who has like similar pharma specific. This GXP is like a pharma auditing experience, and to transition into a role with IT audit. So I mean, and we've gone through a lot of questions, but um, if you can like briefly touch upon that, it's very specific, because it's a very specific question from her. So
So I would say that most, I would look at online classes, or if there are some universities local to where Anshu is, look for classes that make somebody familiar with technology concepts, fundamentals of computer science. Most universities, especially online, there are like literally millions of resources available that can help somebody become familiar with like a CS 101, like computer science 101 classes, right? Or a mini class in, in computer science or information technology. There are classes available through Udemy, Udacity, Khan Academy. I mean, there are literally no dearth of information technology resources that are available that can help somebody become familiar with basic technology concepts and fundamentals. You can also look for CompTIA's, A plus certification, Network Plus certifications, and those are good entry level certifications for people who want to become familiar with information technology. Those are great certifications to have. And if I were looking at a resume of somebody who did not have like a technical background, in the sense that they didn't have a technical degree, but if I saw that they had successfully passed an A plus or a Network Plus certification, that would go a long way in for me to say, that's fine. If they have these certifications, that's sufficient for me to, move, at least look for other things on that resume beyond that.
sure. And Priyanka, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, if Anshu wants to reach out directly to me, I'd be happy to talk to her, so she can hit me up on LinkedIn. I can have a quick conversation with her specific to her circumstances.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Because this is the reason why we are having these kind of conversations. Because I know you guys are really busy with your work and your life and everything, and now taking time off to pay it forward to people who want to understand and who want to know what to do is really good. So this is the idea, right? Like going forward also, these are the kind of conversations we will continue to have. So thank you so much today for joining us and taking so much time even to prepare for this. And then again, just the sheer fact that all of us are together on this hour-long call. And thanks so much. And I really appreciate you. And from everybody else who's on the viewing on our YouTube channel, as well as people who are sending me messages from the different other sources. Thanks so much for everyone, from everyone to you. And thank you.
You're very welcome. And thanks for
Thank you.
organizing this, Nilofer. Thank you so much.
You're
Thanks for giving
welcome.
us the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.